Alright, kind of a response video to the Meme Dish guy. I made another video. Not a great video. And I was kind of hoping the comments in the last video would be better. But I will post this to the economics channel. Just can't hurt to keep pushing the point. So anyway, some people made some reference in the comments in the last video about the fiat currency, and of course a few snide remarks and some like I need to know, I need to better understand. And it's just garbage, nonsense. This is coming from people who have, the myopic kind of view or something, like currencies have to be fixed on a standard and all kinds of other nonsense. There's nothing wrong with a fiat currency, a fake currency, as long as you don't keep producing too much of it or produce it in a wrong balance to real growth in an economy. And that's where it all goes wrong. So if you don't balance it right, yeah, it's going to be failure. It has to be balanced right. You have to get it right, or it's going to be wrong. That's the way it's going to work. But it can be a very powerful tool if used right. Another point I'd make is that there's this whole thing of us financing debt and taxation, and the simplest, people advocate for this flat tax or some other kind of tax scheme. And in my opinion, if you're going to go with that kind of notion that tax should be basically on consumption, then it would be just simpler to print extra money, just have the government print extra money. That would essentially create a balanced tax. And it would keep our currency, it would be as long as workers' wages rose with the constant inflation that would exist in the economy, there wouldn't be any real danger in that. It would be a tax felt proportionally throughout the economy. But it might do some real damage to something like interest rates. But again, it really depends, as long as you make sure the minimum wage grows at the same standard and all other elements of the society are tied to that inflation rate, the important elements, it do the same thing, and it would alleviate the whole expense of having a taxation system or a scheme. And it would also eliminate all the backdoor ways people try to get around any kind of tax scheme. All the black markets, it would prevent all of that. I still believe in a progressive tax system. I think it's the only rational way to go. But if you had a system that did prevent inheritance and excessive consolidation of wealth, excessive salaries, then a flat tax could be a rational alternative, and one that would be applied in a way that didn't require a whole infrastructure to apply it. So there would be some value to that. So anyway, that wasn't the point of Meme Dish's video, so I'll get to that, which really didn't have a point. I mean, it wasn't really focused very well. And it kind of went into areas that really don't have anything to do with economies, I don't think. There's certain people that are in this game. I mean, the game is really about these players and the rules of the game that the players are in. And people on welfare and the disabled aren't really players in the game. Okay, they're part of the human race. Okay, they're going to have to be dealt with as part of the whole stadium atmosphere, but they're not really players on the field. And the economic system I've proposed has to do with the players on the field and creating fair rules for them to play by, ones that make for a good game. If we take whatever we can glean out of that system as a society, as a civilization, and we decide that certain other people deserve to be taken care of, well, that's a completely different, ethical question. It's a different social question. It really isn't about economics. That's about being human. That's a human argument, a humanism argument, not an economics argument. And I would argue for the welfare and the disabled. I mean, the one thing we shouldn't be doing is subsidizing the reproduction of failure. I mean, if you're not making it in your life, you really got no business having children. It might sound to some sort of cruelty, but it really isn't. I mean, to tell the poor that they're really not allowed to recklessly reproduce is no horror. I mean, to tell them they can't extort society for money to take care of their kids that they can't even afford to take care of, that certainly isn't a horror. But like I said, it doesn't really have anything to do with economics. Marx might have used some metaphors, to the needy based on their need kind of stuff and whatever. And to me, that's nonsense. We certainly should give people in limited circumstances as many choices as possible, and give them every mechanism possible to make themselves functional and productive. But we also should give them a free choice to say, yeah, okay, I'm really not making it, and I probably do the world a favor by just humanely sliding out of here. But certainly not reproducing. I mean, it's just pretty stupid to reproduce failure. And to subsidize it as a society. That's just kind of dumb. And as it goes for other kinds of welfare, like I said, I personally, I think that, yeah, we should take care of people that are broken. But we should certainly also offer them a choice. If they freely want to choose to die in a humane way, we should offer them a choice. We sort of put people in this no-win circumstance. I mean, dying isn't easy. That's a whole nother subject, but it really isn't. If you gave slaves the option to kill themselves or to sterilize themselves, they'd probably take the option because they wouldn't want to perpetuate their enslavement. They wouldn't want to bestow that to their children. But they have to be humans. They're human beings. They have to live a life. And so they will acclimate to their circumstance, and they will struggle to survive because that's our nature. It's also our nature just to avoid the death thing. But we certainly shouldn't create artificial obstacles to people choosing not to live. And we certainly should give the poor every opportunity to be responsible about their reproduction and get themselves sterilized for free or whatever. It's just stupid to leave that loose cannon to, bounce around the deck of the boat, so to speak. Using a metaphor. But the same attitude I hold for the useless rich. I mean, they're a blight on society. They're not productive. And so if they're not going to choose, if they just can't, if they're just too caught up in their extravagance, well, let their extravagance die with them. But don't perpetuate the nonsense. Don't perpetuate the silver spoon, highly dependent lifestyle of it's really an inhuman. It doesn't reflect in any way on real human life and how it has to be lived. And so it's just bullshit. It's fake. It's a false life and a false lifestyle. We shouldn't sit back and just say, yes, let's subsidize that nonsense. Let's perpetuate that silliness. All right. So anyway, my economics is really just about the real players in the game, and those are the only reason why the rich are players is because they control the industry. They control what gets made and how it gets made, and under what circumstances they control the system, and they're gleaning their profit off the system. All right, they're not doing anything vital except holding the resources that would be used to invest and build. And if we just move that surplus into other people's hands, it can still do the same building and investing, but the profit won't be gleaned by them. It'd be gleaned by the people doing the work in those industries that are invested in. And that's where the real control of surplus should lie, is with the people doing the productive work. And you can have a really competitive game, a really good game. People can be out for themselves. They don't have to be obliged to take one for the team all the time and bunt and all that stuff. They can be selfish and egomaniacal, and as long as it's in the range of a rational range where they can't go too far, they can't take it too far, it's going to be very productive. But yeah, it's only productive when you don't allow slavery and exploitation and all these evils. And so if you take that out of the equation, you can people can still be encouraged to improve themselves and to be more productive, and they'll get a return for that and a reward for that. But it'll be a reasonable proportion. It won't be a lottery system. And by creating a lottery system, people will stop buying the tickets. When they lose enough money, they'll stop buying tickets. They'll stop investing in the lottery, and that's what you don't want to create. And you certainly don't want to do it in a way that bleeds the system, and that's what the rich bleed the system. They bleed the incentive. They bleed the life out of people. They drive them to drink, literally, by giving them such a shitty and rotten life. And we don't need them. Like I said, they don't provide any vital function. They do not create a job. Demand creates jobs. It's that simple. It obliges supply to be created, and it will be created, and it doesn't need the rich anywhere in the equation. And if they're out of the equation, most especially, then the resources they are consuming would be in the equation. They would be in the economy doing constructive and productive things, either through consumption or through investment in the creation of future production. So whatever, just But I just think, like I said, you got to really have to separate economics from welfare. The two things really don't have anything to do with each other. And then you want to talk about rational tax policy. That's a discussion worth having, I suppose. But again, we got to realize what taxation is, and it's just a consolidation by the people, the society, of some surplus, and saying, well, yes, we're going to invest the surplus in this infrastructure. And it certainly can be done better, but that becomes an argument about politics, not necessarily about economics. Because if you're going to strictly look at it economically, these are all systems where we can create a regime, a hierarchy, an authority that can be very reliable, very open source, very scrutinizable, where there's enough rules in place, like I said, where the game can take place, and there's contingencies for every problem, and it never gets out of control.